But all I see. The classroom was louder than usual. Students from hundreds of different planets talked, laughed, and argued with each other before the lesson started. Every seat was filled with strange creatures. Some had glowing blue skin, some had 4 arms. Others had long tails or shining crystal eyes. The room looked more like a galaxy museum than a school. Only one student looked different. She was human. Her name was Luna. She quietly sat near the back of the classroom, trying not to draw attention to herself. Most students ignored her. Some laughed whenever they saw her. To them, humans were weak, slow, primitive, a race that could never stand beside the great warriors of the galaxy. Luna had heard those words many times before. She never answered. She simply stayed quiet. She came to learn, not to fight, not to prove anyone wrong. At least, that was what everyone believed. Suddenly, boom! The classroom door opened with a loud sound. Every student became silent. Their professor had arrived. He was over 9 feet tall. His dark silver armor reflected the classroom lights. A long black cape moved behind him even though there was no wind. His glowing golden eyes slowly looked around the room. Nobody dared to speak. This was Professor Kaler, one of the most respected battle masters in the entire Galactic Academy. He had trained thousands of elite soldiers. He had fought monsters that could destroy cities. He had survived wars that most people only read about in history books. Even the strongest alien students feared him. Professor Kaler walked toward the center of the classroom. Without saying a single word, he placed a small metal cube on his desk. It looked harmless, no bigger than a baseball. The students looked at each other with confused faces. "What is that?" someone whispered. Professor Kaler smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who already knew the answer. Then he pressed one small button. The cube suddenly opened. A bright blue light exploded across the classroom. Everyone covered their eyes. The floor began to shake. The walls vibrated. The lights flickered. Several students jumped out of their seats. "What is happening?" Then, something started coming out of the cube. First, only a shadow, then giant claws, then enormous legs. Within seconds, a massive beast stood in the middle of the classroom. It was almost 15 feet tall. Its body was covered with black scales that looked harder than steel. The sharp claws dug into the classroom floor. Its eyes burned like red fire. Its breathing sounded like thunder. Every breath filled the room with hot air. One student screamed. Another quickly moved backward. Someone dropped their notebook. Nobody had expected this. The beast slowly looked around the room. It wasn't angry. Not yet. But everyone could feel its power. Even standing close to it felt dangerous. Professor Kaler crossed his arms. "This," he said calmly, "is today's lesson." The classroom stayed completely silent. Then he asked one simple question. "Who among you believes they can defeat this beast?" Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody even looked at the monster. The strongest students lowered their heads. One alien with 4 powerful arms slowly took a step backward. Another student quietly whispered, "That's impossible." The professor waited. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Still, nothing. Professor Kaler looked disappointed. "So this is the future of the Galactic Academy?" His voice echoed through the room. "I expected warriors. Is fear?" Several students looked embarrassed. But nobody stepped forward. Everyone knew stories about creatures like this. Even trained soldiers sometimes failed to survive against them. This wasn't a school exercise. This looked like certain death. The professor slowly walked beside the beast. He gently placed one hand on its shoulder. "This creature has defeated combat robots. It has crushed military machines. It has hunted dangerous predators. And today, none of you are willing to challenge it." The room became even quieter. One student finally stood up. Hope appeared on everyone's face. Maybe someone would accept the challenge. But instead, "I surrender." The student sat back down immediately. Several classmates nodded. Another student stood. "I refuse." Then another. I can't beat that. One by one, every powerful alien admitted defeat without even trying. Professor Kaler sighed. I see. So all your confidence disappears the moment real danger appears. His eyes slowly moved across the room, until they stopped on Luna, the only human in the classroom. Some students noticed. A few started laughing. One whispered loudly, "What's he looking at?" Another smiled. "The human." "No way. Humans aren't fighters. They're survivors. They run. They hide. They lose." More laughter spread across the room. Luna kept looking down at her desk. She had heard worse. The professor stared at her for several long seconds. The classroom froze. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound came from the giant beast as it let out a slow, deep growl. Every student stared at Luna. Some looked confused. Others looked amused. A few thought she had lost her mind. Then laughter slowly filled the room again. A tall student with blue skin shook his head. "This is going to be embarrassing." Another alien smiled. "The fight won't even last 5 seconds." Someone near the front whispered, "The professor should stop her before she gets hurt." Luna ignored every word. She stood calmly in front of the enormous creature. Her breathing stayed steady. Her hands rested by her sides. She looked more relaxed than anyone else in the room. Professor Kaler watched her carefully. His face showed no emotion, but inside, he was curious. When the beast stepped backward only moments ago, he knew something unusual had happened. This creature feared nothing. It had faced war machines. It had attacked giant predators. It had never stepped away from an enemy, until today, until it saw one quiet human girl. The professor slowly spoke. "Luna, are you certain about your decision?" She nodded once. "Yes. You understand that this creature can seriously injure you." "I do. You may not survive." "I understand." The room became silent again. Most students expected fear. Instead, they heard confidence. Not loud confidence. Not proud confidence. Just calm certainty. Professor Kaler looked into her eyes. He searched for hesitation. He found none. Finally, he stepped aside. "So be it." The beast lifted its massive head. Its red eyes remained locked on Luna. It growled again. But this time, something felt different. The growl sounded uncertain. Almost careful. Professor Kaler noticed it. "So," he thought, "you remember something. Interesting. Very interesting." The students could not understand what was happening. One whispered, "Why isn't it attacking?" Another answered, "Maybe it's waiting for the professor's command." The third laughed. "It wants to enjoy the hunt." No one noticed that the beast's breathing had changed. It was breathing faster. The sharp claws scratched against the floor. Not because it wanted to attack, because it felt nervous. Luna slowly raised one hand. Not to fight, not to threaten. She simply opened her palm. The beast immediately stopped growling. Every student looked at each other. "What? Did you see that? How?" Even Professor Kaler raised one eyebrow. This should not have been possible. The beast obeyed no one. Not soldiers. Not commanders. Not scientists. Only its trainer. Yet somehow, it reacted to Luna's smallest movement. The classroom filled with whispers. "Who is she? This doesn't make sense. Is she using some kind of mind power?" Professor Kaler finally spoke. "Attack." The single word echoed through the room. The beast looked toward him, then back at Luna. It did not move. Professor Kaler repeated the order. Loudly. "Attack." The beast growled, but stayed exactly where it was. Now the professor knew. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He walked closer to the creature, placed one hand on its neck. Its muscles were shaking. Not with anger, with fear. Impossible. This creature feared almost nothing in the galaxy. So why was it afraid of one human girl? Kaler looked back at Luna. His curiosity became stronger. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Luna smiled gently. "I'm just a student." Several aliens laughed again. No, the professor replied. You are much more than that. Before Luna could answer, a loud alarm suddenly echoed through the academy. Warning! Warning! Security alert! Every screen inside the classroom turned bright red. Students looked around in confusion. What happened? Another announcement followed. Dangerous life form detected inside Training Sector 7. The classroom doors automatically locked. Emergency lights flashed across the ceiling. The students immediately became nervous. Professor Kaler touched the communication device on his arm. This is Professor Kaler. What happened? A frightened voice answered. Professor. We lost control. His face became serious. Lost control of what? Several seconds of silence followed. Then came the answer. The Titan Beast. The classroom instantly became quiet. Every student knew that name. The Titan Beast. A legendary monster. Almost 30 feet tall. Strong enough to destroy armored tanks with one strike. Fast enough to outrun military vehicles. So dangerous that only the Academy's highest security team was allowed near it. The voice continued. It escaped. Professor Kaler's expression changed. How? We don't know. It broke through every security gate. It's moving toward the main academy. The communication ended. Nobody said a word. Even the small beast inside the classroom became restless. It lowered itself close to the ground, like prey sensing a larger predator nearby. One student whispered, No! It can't be. Another student's hands started shaking. If the Titan reaches the academy, we're all dead. Professor Kaler immediately turned toward the class. Everyone stay inside. No one leaves. I'll handle this. He started walking toward the exit. Then, the building shook violently. Boom! Dust fell from the ceiling. Several students screamed. Another explosion followed. Even bigger. The classroom windows cracked. Far away, something roared. The sound was so powerful that it vibrated through everyone's chest. Some students covered their ears. Others nearly fell to the floor. One frightened alien whispered, That's the Titan. Professor Kaler stopped walking. His face became completely serious. No! It's already here. Another explosion echoed through the academy. Emergency lights turned even brighter. Outside the classroom, people were screaming, running. Security alarms filled every hallway. The academy was no longer safe. Professor Kaler looked at his students, then toward Luna. For just 1 second, their eyes met. Neither of them spoke, but somehow felt like both of them understood something. The professor slowly asked, Luna, when you looked at my beast, it became afraid. She remained silent. I need the truth. Have you ever seen creatures like these before? Luna looked toward the broken classroom window. She listened to the distant roar of teach. The classroom disappeared beneath a cloud of dust. Pieces of concrete crashed onto the floor. Students screamed as desks flipped over. Some ran toward the back wall. Others hid beneath their seats. No one had expected the Titan beast to reach them so quickly. Then, a second massive claw ripped through the broken wall. The building shook like it was made of paper. Professor Kaler stepped in front of his students. His voice became louder than ever. Everyone stay behind me. The Academy's strongest battle instructor activated the glowing energy armor around his body. Golden light surrounded him. A long plasma spear appeared in his hand. The students finally felt a little hope. If anyone can stop it. One student whispered, It's Professor Kaler. Slowly, the Titan beast pushed its enormous head through the broken wall. The room suddenly felt tiny. Its glowing orange eyes scanned every corner. Its black scales looked thicker than spaceship armor. Each breath sounded like an explosion. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled the classroom. Nobody dared to breathe. Professor Kaler tightened his grip on his weapon. He had fought dangerous creatures before, but never one this large. Never one this powerful. The Academy reports were clear. The Titan beast had destroyed 3 military facilities before it was captured. More than 500 elite soldiers had failed to stop it. Some never returned home. Kaler knew exactly what they were facing. This wasn't simply a monster. It was a living disaster. Outside, emergency sirens echoed across the academy. Students from other buildings were running toward evacuation ships. Security drones filled the sky. Explosions continued in the distance. Everything was falling apart. Inside the classroom, the Titan beast suddenly growled. Its roar shattered the remaining classroom windows. Several students covered their ears in pain. The smaller training beast immediately dropped onto the floor. His entire body trembled. It refused to even look at the Titan. Professor Kaler spoke into his communicator. Emergency response team. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. The communication network was gone. They were completely alone. Kaler slowly moved forward. His glowing spear pointed directly at the Titan beast. If it enters this room, he thought, we're finished. Then something unexpected happened. The Titan ignored him. It ignored every frightened student. It ignored the smaller beast. Its burning orange eyes locked onto one person, Luna. She stood quietly behind everyone else. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't running. She simply watched the enormous creature. The Titan stared back. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. The classroom became completely silent. One student whispered, "Why is it looking at her?" Another answered, "Attack. It should attack." But it didn't. Instead, the Titan slowly lowered its head. Professor Kaler frowned. "No," he whispered. "That can't be right." The giant monster was changing. Its breathing slowed. Its growling disappeared. Its eyes softened. Then, it made a sound. Not a roar. Not a threat. It sounded almost like recognition. Luna slowly walked forward. Professor Kaler immediately stepped into her path. "Stop. It'll kill you." Luna looked at him calmly. "No, it won't. You can't know that." "I do." Before Kaler could stop her, Luna gently walked past him. The students stared in disbelief. One shouted, "Come back." Another screamed, "Are you crazy?" She kept walking. One step, then another, until only a few feet separated her from the Titan beast. The giant creature lowered its head even more. Its enormous glowing eyes never left her face. Professor Kaler couldn't understand it. His battle experience told him this was impossible. Wild creatures never behaved like this, especially not Titans. Luna slowly raised her hand. Every student gasped. The Titan could crush her with one bite. Instead, closed its eyes. Luna gently placed her hand on the monster's giant forehead. Nothing happened. No attack. No roar. No violence. The Titan stood perfectly still. The entire classroom froze. Nobody believed what they were seeing. The deadliest creature in the academy was allowing a human girl to touch it. One student whispered, "This has to be some kind of illusion." Another slowly shook his head. "No, it's real." Professor Kaler couldn't move. His mind raced through every possibility. Mind control? Impossible. Telepathy? No known human possessed that ability. Hidden technology? Nothing detected. Then, Luna smiled. The Titan answered with a soft rumble, almost like a giant animal greeting an old friend. Professor Kaler finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Who are you?" Luna stayed silent for a moment. She gently stroked the Titan's armored skin. Then she quietly spoke. "When I was little, I wasn't afraid of monsters. I grew up with them." The room exploded with confusion. "What? That's impossible. Humans don't live with creatures like this." Luna looked at the frightened students. "You've only studied Earth through old records. They don't tell the whole story." Professor Kaler narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Luna looked back at the Titan. "My father wasn't an ordinary man. He spent his life rescuing dangerous creatures. Creatures that everyone else wanted to destroy." The students listened carefully. The academy had gone completely silent. No one spoke. No one even dared to breathe. Outside the broken classroom wall, Giant shadows moved through the smoke. Every few seconds, the ground shook. Heavy footsteps echoed across the campus. Boom, boom, boom. Each step felt closer than the last. Students slowly backed away from the broken wall. One girl whispered with trembling lips, How many are out there?" Nobody answered. Professor Kaler walked toward the opening and carefully looked outside. The sight made his heart stop. The academy was surrounded. Massive creatures stood between the buildings. Some were covered in silver scales that reflected the burning fires. Others had thick black armor across their backs. One creature had 6 glowing eyes. Another had wings so large they blocked the sunlight. Security vehicles were scattered across the ground like broken toys. Several defense towers had already fallen. The Academy's strongest shields were failing. Kaler had spent over 30 years fighting dangerous lifeforms. But he had never seen so many ancient beasts together. Not once. He slowly whispered, "This isn't an attack." Luna stood beside the Titan. She quietly replied, "No, they're searching." Professor Kaler looked at her. "Searching for what?" Luna gently rested her hand on the Titan's neck. "For him." The Titan lowered its head again, almost like it understood every word. One student suddenly shouted, "Then tell it to leave. If it goes away, the others will follow." Several students quickly agreed. "Yes, make it leave. Save the Academy." Luna looked toward the frightened crowd. Then she slowly shook her head. "It can't." "Why not?" Kaler asked. Luna remained silent for a few seconds. Her eyes became distant, almost as if she was remembering something painful. Finally she spoke. "Because it's injured." Everyone looked at the Titan. First they saw nothing. Then Luna pointed toward its left side. Professor Kaler stepped closer. Only then did he notice it. Hidden beneath the thick black scales was a deep wound. It stretched nearly 8 feet across its side. Dark blood slowly dripped onto the classroom floor. The students gasped. "How did we miss that?" The injury was partly covered by dust and damaged armor-like scales. But now, it was impossible to ignore. Luna carefully examined the wound. "It has been running for days. It hasn't eaten. It hasn't rested." Professor Kaler frowned. "This injury wasn't caused by our academy." Luna nodded. "No, it was already wounded before it came here." The professor's mind raced. If something could injure a Titan, then what kind of creature was chasing it? Before anyone could speak, the Titan suddenly growled. Not with anger, with pain. It nearly collapsed. Its massive front legs bent beneath its weight. The entire building shook. Without thinking, Luna rushed forward. She placed both hands against the creature's neck. "It's okay. You're safe now." Her calm voice echoed through the room. The Titan slowly relaxed again. Several students stared in disbelief. Professor Kaler had trained soldiers for decades. He knew fear. He knew courage. But what Luna showed wasn't either. It was trust. Real trust. The kind that couldn't be faked. Then, a loud explosion echoed from outside. The Academy's main defense wall collapsed. Smoke rose into the sky. Emergency broadcasts filled every hallway. Tension. Outer defenses destroyed. All remaining personnel evacuate immediately. Panic spread through the classroom. One student cried, "We have to run." Another grabbed his backpack. "We'll never survive." Several students rushed toward the emergency exit. Professor Kaler blocked the doorway. "Stop!" His powerful voice echoed across the room. "If you run outside now, you'll run straight into those creatures." Everyone froze. He was right. The academy grounds were already filled with monsters. There was nowhere safe to go. Silence returned. Then Luna quietly asked, "Professor, can I ask you something?" Kaler nodded. "What did your history books teach you about Titans?" The professor answered without hesitation. "They are violent. They destroy civilizations. They cannot be reasoned with. They attack everything." Luna looked into his eyes. "Did you ever wonder who wrote those books?" The professor blinked. "What?" History is written by the survivors. The room became quiet again. Luna continued, "My father always told me something. A scared person tells the story from their own side. Sometimes, the monster isn't the real monster." Several students looked confused. Professor Kaler crossed his arms. "Explain." Luna slowly nodded. "When I was little, my father received a rescue signal. It came from an unexplored planet. When we arrived, we expected to find dangerous predators. But instead, we found frightened families. They weren't human. They weren't soldiers. They were titans." Several students stared in disbelief. "They had babies. They were hiding inside caves. They weren't hunting. They were hiding." Professor Kaler interrupted. "Hiding from what?" Luna's expression darkened. "Hunters." Everyone fell silent. "Hunters." She nodded. "Professional hunters. They traveled across the galaxy. They captured rare creatures. They sold them. They didn't care if they destroyed entire species." One student whispered, "They hunted titans?" Luna nodded again. "For money. For experiments. For powerful collectors." Professor Kaler suddenly remembered something. Years ago, several classified military reports had disappeared. Entire research stations had vanished. At the time, the government blamed wild creatures. But what if the reports had hidden the truth? Luna looked at the wounded titan. "My father helped rescue many of them. He believed every creature deserved a chance to live. Not because they were harmless, but because they were alive." The titan gently leaned its enormous head closer to Luna, almost like it remembered those words. One student quietly asked, "Is that why it trusts you?" Luna smiled softly. "When I was 8 years old, my father saved a baby titan. It was smaller than this classroom. It had lost its family. For almost 6 months, we cared for it. We fed it. We treated its injuries. When it became strong enough, we released it." The students listened without saying a word. Then Luna looked toward the giant creature beside her. "I think this is the same one." The classroom exploded with shock. "No way. That's impossible. It couldn't remember you after all these years." Luna gently touched the titan's face. "It remembered." The titan slowly closed its eyes. Professor Kaler stared at them both. For the first time in his life, everything he believed about monsters began to fall apart. Then, the titan suddenly lifted its head. Its eyes widened. It looked toward the sky. A deep growl escaped its throat. Luna immediately turned. Her face lost all color. "Oh no!" Professor Kaler followed her gaze. High above the academy, several enormous black ships emerged from the clouds. They weren't military ships. They carried no academy symbols. Instead, each ship displayed the same silver mark. A claw wrapped around a planet. Luna whispered, "They found him." Kaler frowned. "Who are they?" Luna answered with a voice barely above a whisper. "The hunters." As the ships descended, huge metal cages opened beneath them. Thousands of armed soldiers prepared their weapons. One command echoed across every speaker. "Capture the Titan alive. Eliminate anyone who interferes." Luna slowly stepped in front of the wounded Titan. Professor Kaler looked at her. "What are you doing?" She took a deep breath. "The same thing my father would have done." She faced the army alone. "I won't let them take him." The sky turned dark, not because night had arrived, but because dozens of giant hunter ships blocked the sunlight. Their engines roared across the academy. Smoke covered the air. The students looked up in horror. Every ship slowly floated into position, one after another, like wolves surrounding their prey. Professor Kaler clenched his fists. He had seen those ships before, years ago, during a classified military mission. Only one organization used vessels like these, the Black Fang Syndicate. Officially, they didn't exist. Unofficially, everyone feared them. They hunted the rarest creatures in the galaxy. If someone had enough money, Black Fang could capture anything. Even monsters thought impossible to control. Kaler whispered, "So the rumors were true." Luna kept her eyes on the sky. They never stopped hunting. A loud mechanical voice echoed from every ship. "Attention! Hand over the Titan. Anyone who resists will be treated as an enemy." Several students immediately panicked. "We have to give it up. It's only one beast. We'll all die." The frightened voices spread through the classroom. Luna slowly turned toward them. "It isn't just one beast." Everyone looked at her. "If they capture him, they'll hunt every Titan left alive." Silence. One student asked, "How do you know?" Luna looked at the wounded creature beside her. "Because that's what they always do." Outside, large transport doors opened beneath the hunter ships. Heavy armored soldiers began dropping onto the academy grounds. Each one wore black combat armor. Red lights glowed across their helmets. Energy rifles locked into place. Combat drones flew above them. Within minutes, hundreds of soldiers surrounded the academy. Professor Kaler immediately recognized their formation. "They're professionals. They've done this many times." A student whispered, "We don't stand a chance." Kaler didn't answer, because he knew the student was right. The academy's security forces were already overwhelmed. Most defense systems had been destroyed. The hunters had planned this attack carefully. This wasn't a random assault. It was an operation. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the largest ship. He landed on the ground without making a sound. Tall, calm, confident. His black coat moved gently in the wind. Silver armor covered one side of his body. A long scar crossed his face. One glowing red eye slowly scanned the battlefield. Even the hunter soldiers stepped aside. Nobody wanted to stand in his path. Professor Kaler's face became pale. "No! It can't be." Luna looked at him. "You know him?" Kaler nodded slowly. "I hoped he was dead." The man smiled. His voice echoed through the destroyed academy. "It's been a long time, Professor." The students looked between them. "You know each other?" Kaler tightened his grip on his spear. His answer came quietly. "We trained together." Gasps filled the classroom. "What?" Kaler continued. "He was once one of the academy's greatest students." "What happened?" "He chose money over honor." The man laughed. "I chose reality." He slowly walked forward. Every hunter soldier lowered their weapons in respect. "My name is Commander Varric. And unlike you, I stopped believing in heroes." His glowing eye locked onto Luna. "So, the famous human finally appears." Luna's expression didn't change. "You know me?" Varric smiled. "I knew your father." The room became silent. Luna's heartbeat quickened. "You worked with him?" "I offered him a job. He refused." "What happened?" Varric's smile disappeared. "He made a mistake." Luna slowly understood. Her voice became cold. "You killed him." Varric remained silent. That silence was enough. Luna closed her eyes. For years, she had believed her father died during a rescue mission. Now, the truth stood in front of her. Professor Kaler stepped beside her. "Stay calm." But Luna wasn't listening anymore. Every memory came rushing back. Her father teaching her to care for injured creatures. Her father telling her, power should protect, never destroy. She remembered his final goodbye, his promise to return home, promise that was never kept. She slowly opened her eyes. There were no tears, only determination. Varric noticed. "I see his spirit lives inside you." Luna answered quietly, "You don't deserve to speak about him." The commander's smile vanished. He raised one hand. Immediately, hundreds of hunter soldiers aimed their weapons. Red targeting lasers covered Luna. Professor Kaler stepped forward. "If you fire, you start a war." Varric laughed. "No, I end one." Then he gave the order. "Capture the girl." Before anyone could react, dozens of soldiers charged forward. Energy nets launched through the air. Luna didn't move. Professor Kaler spun his glowing spear. Bright golden light exploded around him. The first energy net burned into ashes. He struck the floor. A powerful shockwave threw several soldiers backward. The students stared in amazement. Their professor was fighting. Not for the academy. Not for orders. For Luna. Kaler looked over his shoulder. Get the Titan out of here. Luna shook her head. I won't leave you. You don't have time to argue. Another wave of soldiers rushed forward. Combat drones fired blue energy blasts. Kaler blocked several attacks. But there were too many. Even for him. The hunters slowly pushed closer. Varric watched calmly. He wasn't worried. He knew numbers would win. Then, something unexpected happened. The wounded Titan slowly stood. Its injured legs shook. Its body trembled from exhaustion. Yet, it stepped in front of Luna. The enormous creature spread its body like a living shield. Energy blasts slammed into its armored scales. It roared in pain, but refused to move. The students watched in disbelief. One whispered, "It's protecting her." Another replied, "Because she protected it first." Luna gently touched the Titan's neck. "You don't have to fight." The Titan answered with another deep roar, as if saying, "Yes, I do." Then, roars echoed across the valley. Every Titan outside answered. One after another. The entire ground shook. The pack had heard their leader. And now, they were coming. Commander Varric's confident smile finally disappeared. He looked toward the distant mountains. Dust clouds rose into the sky. Hundreds, no, thousands, of giant footsteps echoed across the land. One hunter soldier whispered, "Commander, I think we've made a mistake." Varric narrowed his eyes. "No." He slowly drew a glowing black blade from his belt. "We finish this now." He pointed the weapon directly at Luna. "Bring me the girl." The hunters charged once more. And this time, the Titans charged too. The battlefield exploded into chaos. The ground shook with unstoppable force. The mountains echoed with the thunder of thousands of giant footsteps. Smoke rolled across the academy. Broken buildings trembled. Every hunter-soldier stopped for a moment. They looked toward the horizon. Their faces turned pale. An endless line of Titans was running toward the academy. Some were twice the size of the wounded Titan. Others had enormous wings that stretched across the sky. The earth cracked beneath their weight. Commander Varric narrowed his glowing red eye. "So, they all came." Professor Kaler slowly stepped beside Luna. His golden spear was covered with dust. His armor showed deep cracks from the battle. Yet he stood tall. He looked at Luna. "What now?" Luna never took her eyes off the approaching Titans. "We stop this." Kaler frowned. "How?" "If the Titans attack, and the hunters fight back, thousands will die." Luna quietly nodded. "I know." The wounded Titan suddenly moved closer to her. It lowered its massive head beside her shoulder, like it was waiting, trusting her, believing in her. Luna gently touched its face. Then she smiled. "I need your help." The giant creature answered with a deep rumble. It slowly bent one front leg. Professor Kaler watched in confusion. "What is it doing?" Luna looked at him. "It's asking me to climb." The students stared in disbelief. "No way." Luna carefully climbed onto the Titan's back. The creature slowly stood. She was now higher than every building in the academy. The wind pushed against her hair. Below her, hunters aimed their weapons. Students watched in silence. Even the Titans approaching from the distance slowed their charge. Every eye was now on Luna. Commander Varric laughed. "You think standing on a monster will save you?" Luna calmly answered, "No. I'm here to stop one." Varric smiled. "Then stop me." He raised his black blade. Every hunter-soldier prepared to fire. At that exact moment, Luna placed both hands on the Titan's head. She closed her eyes. The battlefield became strangely quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. Professor Kaler looked around. "What is happening?" Then, a low vibration spread across the valley. Not from machines. Not from engines. From the Titans. Every Titan suddenly stopped moving. Thousands of enormous creatures stood completely still. One by one, they lowered their heads. The students gasped. They're listening. Luna slowly opened her eyes. She didn't shout. She didn't give an order. She simply spoke, in a language no one else understood. Soft sounds echoed across the battlefield. The wounded Titan answered. Then another Titan repeated the sound. Then another. Within seconds, thousands of Titans were speaking together. The entire valley vibrated. Professor Kaler whispered, "It's a language." Luna had never told anyone, not even her closest friends. When she was a child, she hadn't only lived beside Titans. She had learned to understand them. Her father believed every creature had a voice. If someone cared enough to listen, the Titans weren't roaring. They were talking. They were asking questions. They were afraid. They thought the hunters had captured another member of their family. Luna quietly answered them. "He is safe. I promise." The wounded Titan lifted its head proudly. It let out one long call. The entire Titan herd slowly relaxed. Some sat down. Others stepped backward. The charge had ended. The battle could have been over. But Commander Varric wasn't finished. His face twisted with anger. "No!" He raised his weapon toward Luna. "If I can't capture the Titan, I'll remove the only person controlling them." Professor Kaler shouted. "Luna!" A beam of black energy shot through the sky. Everything happened in seconds. Luna couldn't move. The Titan couldn't react fast enough. Then, Professor Kaler jumped. He threw himself into the path of the blast. The energy struck his armor. A powerful explosion shook the battlefield. Kaler crashed to the ground. His spear rolled across the broken stones. "Professor!" Luna cried. She quickly climbed down from the Titan. She reached him. His armor was badly damaged. He struggled to breathe, but he smiled. "I finally made the right choice." Luna grabbed his hand. "Stay with me." Kaler slowly looked toward the students. 4 years. I taught strength. But today, you taught me something greater." He looked back at Luna. "Kindness is stronger than fear." The students watched with tears in their eyes. Even the hunter soldiers stood silently. Commander Varric growled. "This changes nothing." He activated another weapon. A massive cannon unfolded from his armor. Blue energy gathered at its center. It wasn't aimed at Luna. It wasn't aimed at Kaler. It was aimed at every Titan. "If I can't sell them, I'll destroy them." The students screamed. The cannon continued charging. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Luna looked around desperately. There wasn't enough time. Then, the wounded Titan stepped forward. It stood between the cannon and the Titan herd. One creature. Against impossible odds. Luna shook her head. "No! You'll die." The Titan looked back at her. For the first time, she understood exactly what it meant. Family protects family. Tears filled her eyes. Before the cannon could fire, something incredible happened. Every Titan moved, not to attack, to protect. Hundreds of enormous creatures formed a living wall. The ground shook with unstoppable force. The mountains echoed with the thunder of thousands of giant footsteps. Smoke rolled across the academy. Broken buildings trembled. Every hunter soldier stopped for a moment. They looked toward the horizon. Their faces turned pale. An endless line of Titans was running toward the academy. Some were twice the size of the wounded Titan. Others had enormous wings that stretched across the sky. The earth cracked beneath their weight. Commander Varric narrowed his glowing red eye. "So, they all came." Professor Kaler slowly stepped beside Luna. His golden spear was covered with dust. His armor showed deep cracks from the battle. Yet he stood tall. He looked at Luna. "What now?" Luna never took her eyes off the approaching Titans. "We stop this." Kaler frowned. "How?" "If the Titans attack, and the hunters fight back, thousands will die." Luna quietly nodded. "I know." The wounded Titan suddenly moved closer to her. It lowered its massive head beside her shoulder, like it was waiting, trusting her, believing in her. Luna gently touched its face. Then she smiled. "I need your help." The giant creature answered with a deep rumble. It slowly bent one front leg. Professor Kaler watched in confusion. "What is it doing?" Luna looked at him. "It's asking me to climb." The students stared in disbelief. "No way." Luna carefully climbed onto the Titan's back. The creature slowly stood. She was now higher than every building in the academy. The wind pushed against her hair. Below her, hunters aimed their weapons. Students watched in silence. Even the Titans approaching from the distance slowed their charge. Every eye was now on Luna. Commander Varric laughed. "You think standing on a monster will save you?" Luna calmly answered, "No, I'm here to stop one." Varric smiled. "Then stop me." He raised his black blade. Every hunter soldier prepared to fire. At that exact moment, Luna placed both hands on the Titan's head. She closed her eyes. The battlefield became strangely quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. Professor Kaler looked around. "What is happening?" Then, a low vibration spread across the valley. Not from machines. Not from engines. From the Titans. Every Titan suddenly stopped moving. Thousands of enormous creatures stood completely still. One by one, they lowered their heads. The students gasped. They're listening." Luna slowly opened her eyes. She didn't shout. She didn't give an order. She simply spoke, in a language no one else understood. Soft sounds echoed across the battlefield. The wounded Titan answered. Then another Titan repeated the sound. Then another. Within seconds, thousands of Titans were speaking together. The entire valley vibrated. Professor Kaler whispered, "It's a language." Luna had never told anyone, not even her closest friends. When she was a child, she hadn't only lived beside Titans. She had learned to understand them. Her father believed every creature had a voice. If someone cared enough to listen, the Titans weren't roaring. They were talking. They were asking questions. They were afraid. They thought the hunters had captured another member of their family. Luna quietly answered them. "He is safe. I promise." The wounded Titan lifted its head proudly. It let out one long call. The entire Titan herd slowly relaxed. Some sat down. Others stepped backward. The charge had ended. The battle could have been over. But Commander Varric wasn't finished. His face twisted with anger. "No!" He raised his weapon toward Luna. "If I can't capture the Titan, I'll remove the only person controlling them." Professor Kaler shouted. "Luna!" A beam of black energy shot through the sky. Everything happened in seconds. Luna couldn't move. The Titan couldn't react fast enough. Then, Professor Kaler jumped. He threw himself into the path of the blast. The energy struck his armor. A powerful explosion shook the battlefield. Kaler crashed to the ground. His spear rolled across the broken stones. "Professor!" Luna cried. She quickly climbed down from the Titan. She reached him. His armor was badly damaged. He struggled to breathe, but he smiled. "I finally made the right choice." Luna grabbed his hand. "Stay with me." Kaler slowly looked toward the students. 4 years. I taught strength. But today, you taught me something greater." He looked back at Luna. "Kindness is stronger than fear." The students watched with tears in their eyes. Even the hunter soldiers stood silently. Commander Varric growled. "This changes nothing." He activated another weapon. A massive cannon unfolded from his armor. Blue energy gathered at its center. It wasn't aimed at Luna. It wasn't aimed at Kaler. It was aimed at every Titan. "If I can't sell them, I'll destroy them." The students screamed. The cannon continued charging. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Luna looked around desperately. There wasn't enough time. Then, the wounded Titan stepped forward. It stood between the cannon and the Titan herd. One creature, against impossible odds. Luna shook her head. "No! You'll die." The Titan looked back at her. For the first time, she understood exactly what it meant. Family protects family. Tears filled her eyes. Before the cannon could fire, something incredible happened. Every Titan moved, not to attack, to protect. Hundreds of enormous creatures formed a living wall. Young Titans stayed behind the adults. The oldest stood in front. No fear, no panic, only unity. The battlefield fell silent. Even the hunter soldiers looked shocked. Commander Varric hesitated. For the first time in years, he realized something. These weren't mindless monsters. They were a family, and families fought for each other, just like humans. His finger rested on the trigger.